Hello everyone, my name is Christopher Liam Rose. I'm an author, mentor, life coach, motivational speaker, evangelist, musician and activist. In this podcast and audio, we're going to be sharing a message. I've been sharing the Spiritually Helping Other People podcast to inspire humanity to go through a spiritual change, to learn about Jesus Christ, Jehovah and Buddha, to learn about the no self and selflessness, and to learn how to help other people give back and make a difference. Now, in this message, within this audio, we're going to be talking about freedom from the known. Now, this was originally spoken about by Krishnamurti, who was a philosopher and a spiritual teacher in the past, and he basically wrote a whole book called Freedom from the Known. So, freedom from the known is freedom from suffering, pain, and adversity. Freedom from the known of life, so you know yourself in life, you understand yourself, which basically means the no self and selflessness. Freedom from the known means freedom from authority, religion, beliefs, dogma, creeds, rituals, or anything that the life is attached to. Freedom from the known is basically detachment from everything, so you become spiritually free, spiritually liberated, and spiritually awakened. Freedom from the known is very important to discover in life. If we discover the freedom from the known, understand our life experiences, understand who we are, understand why we were born, understand why we were put on earth, learn about our successes, learn about our failures, and learn about the whole aspect of life, then we discover the freedom from the known. So the freedom from the known is know self, know thyself. When you know yourself and know thyself, you achieve the freedom from the known. Now, all human beings can find the freedom from the known in life, but you need to go through a spiritual change in order to find the freedom from the known. The freedom from the known is something that comes from internal side of you. Then that will produce the light that's external. So the light is within you already. Everyone has a light that needs to be shined to the world. When you go for a spiritual change, it changes your psyche and your psychological mind. When you change your psyche and your psychological mind, then you discover freedom from the known. Then you discover the no self and selflessness. Now in life, what Buddha and Jesus Christ was talking about, salvation and nirvana, which is heaven on earth, right? That comes to someone that's gone through a spiritual change and a spiritual awakening. So the spiritual change and the spiritual awakening is what helps you to discover freedom from the known. And freedom from the known is freedom from all of life's problems, all of life's suffering, pains and adversities. So your mind becomes pure, innocent, and able to live freely and abundantly within the world and multiply within the world and be fruitful. So Jesus Christ, Jehovah and Buddha wants us to go through a spiritual change and discover the freedom from the known. When Jiddu Krishnamurti was alive, his whole teachings and his messages and his teachings was about the freedom from the known. Breaking free from the dogma, religion, beliefs, authorities, and beliefs within life. So the freedom from the known is something that we can discover in daily life. It's something that we discover through going through a spiritual change and a spiritual awakening. So the question is, how do we spiritually change? We spiritually change by doing the 5 spiritual practices: prayer, meditation, mindfulness, walking, journaling. By doing the 5 spiritual practices, we go through a spiritual change. When we go through a spiritual change, we awaken the subconsciousness, the spirituality and the faith, and find the no self and selflessness. What happens when we find the no self and selflessness? Then we live a life of spiritual contributions and helping other people, helping humanity, helping the animals and helping the universe. So we do the 5 levels of helping other people. Level 1, volunteering. Level 2, jobs, careers, employment. Level 3, business, entrepreneurship. Level 4, faith and spiritual. Level 5, spiritually helping other people who helping other people. So freedom from the known is going on the journey of spiritual enlightenment and spiritual awakening. Each human being can go through the freedom from the known and discover what Krishnamurti was talking about. When you have freedom and spirituality and faith, you're free from all of life's problems and situations and circumstances, and you become free. Now in life, it's so important to become free, because a lot of human beings are going through suffering, pain, and adversity. So freedom from the known is the first step to spiritual enlightenment. Freedom from life, understanding yourself, learning about yourself, developing yourself and growing yourself, and becoming free and spiritual. Now, spiritual enlightenment changes your life in every aspect of your life. It changes the way you think, behave, act, what you do, how you live, and it changes your morals, your values and beliefs. So we need to go through a spiritual change within the psyche and the psychological mind to understand freedom from the known. Now, when you're spiritually enlightened, you will not do harm to others. You will not hurt people, hurt the animals, hurt the universe in any way. You will be very compassionate, kind, empathetic, compassionate, giving, generous, and compassionate and empathetic. That is a change within the nature. So what needs to change is your psyche and your psychological mind. Once your psyche and your psychological mind changes, then that's a change in nature. When you change in nature, then the light that's already within you shines out. So normally, when you go for a spiritual awakening and a spiritual transformation, the internal gets changed into the external. So however you're feeling internally, your spiritual light, your spiritual guidance, your spiritual encouragement, then reflects externally to the way you live, the way you treat people, the way you behave, the way you act, the way how you live your life. So with freedom from the known, it's freedom from all of life's problems, and that's basically the end of suffering, pain and adversity. There is a way of living life where you're ending suffering, pain and adversity. Sometimes for people, we may have to go through adversity in order to discover that, and suffering and pain. But there is an ending to it, and then you become spiritually enlightened and spiritually free. Now, Jesus Christ, Jehovah and Buddha wants us to become spiritually free and spiritually liberated. And that's the journey of spiritual enlightenment. And the journey of spiritual enlightenment is the self, which all human beings have the self, then spiritual change, and then the no self and selflessness. So when we go on this spiritual journey, we then find the freedom from the known and freedom from all of life's problems, situations and circumstances. And that's the end of suffering, pain and adversity. When you live a life of the ending of suffering, pain and adversity, you're living a spiritual, free, truthful, faithful life. And also a righteous, holy life and religious life. So the most important thing to realize with the freedom from the known is that your psyche and your psychological mind has to change. Once your psyche and your psychological mind changes, then you'll discover freedom from the known. And then when you discover freedom from the known that Krishnamurti was talking about, then you learn the no self and selflessness. And this is what spiritual enlightenment is all about. Basically getting to the point in your life where there's no more self, there's no more I, there's no more me, there's no more my. And we're not focused on any materialistic things or selfish things. We're focused on spiritual contributions, selfless acts, and helping humanity, helping the animals, helping the universe. So I want to just say thank you for Krishnamurti for helping me many years ago when I watched his YouTube video series called A Whole Different Way of Living. And it transformed my life in every single way, and that's why I wanted to make this particular podcast and audio for Krishnamurti, for helping me when I was younger to find spiritual fulfillment and spiritual enlightenment. And obviously you can also get Krishnamurti's book, Freedom from the Known, on Amazon, on eBay, Barnes and Noble, or Waterstones, or any bookstores that are available within the world. And understand that freedom from the known is the no self, know thyself, and selflessness. Once you discover that in life, then you've gone through a spiritual change and a spiritual awakening. So thank you for listening to this podcast and audio. I hope it inspires you and helps you. And as always, thank you for listening now. Take care now. Bye.